Welcome to another episode of Hoopsology. I am Justin Goodrum, joined by Matt Thomas. What's up, man?
Justin, how's it going, man? Listeners, thank you as always for listening. Can you believe we are already approaching May here?
Yeah, time flies, and as approaching May, that means we have our 1 year anniversary of when we relaunched the podcast, formerly the Triple Double Podcast, now Hoopsology. And what a year it has been, man. I just want to personally thank you. And I totally rebranding the show. Never thought we would have, these fancy graphics and all these great guests. So it's been an awesome year, man. Thank you.
Likewise, man. Thank you so much for your time and energy with this, and man, just for talking to me. This has been really fun to look forward to every week for me, and I hope if you guys are listening, you've been enjoying the conversations as well.
For sure. We have a tease of a big announcement, so we'll have some more information on that and when you'll be hearing about that. But I just want to take care of some housekeeping things real quickly. We have 3 interviews that will be appearing on our podcast feed and our YouTube channel. We have DJ Shauna. She is the official DJ of the Milwaukee Bucks. So check that out. That'll be coming. If you're listening to the audio version, then you've already listened to the interview. Awesome chat with her. Really insightful. And then if you're just watching the YouTube version of this, that should be up on the feed already. So please go check that out. Then we have Chris Mulholland. That's going to be coming on this Tuesday. He is a reporter for Nets Daily. He basically breaks down everything concerning the Brooklyn Nets. We get into a lot just about the Knicks versus the Nets, just how the players, where they live at in terms of adapting to a new city, whether it's Brooklyn or New York. So that was a great conversation with him. And then we have Gina Paradiso. She is the co-host of a great podcast, and he was blanking on it real quickly, but basically it's a podcast with Kendrick Perkins about basically sports betting, specifically around the NBA. It's called the Betting Academy Podcast Hoops Edition with Kendrick Perkins, and again, it's Paradiso, Gina Paradiso. So we had an awesome chat with her, and really we delved into a lot, Matt. We went into her history with ESPN, her this knowledge about sneakers, sports betting, NBA Top Shot, just everything. So that's a great chat as well. That's coming up this week. And we have our NBA Last Dance panel. We'll be taping that a week from today, this Sunday, and then that'll be up next week, and that will coincide with our announcement that we'll have a little bit more information on at the end of the show, and then we'll probably break the news at the Last Dance panel as well. So that's going to be a big day for us, just recording the panel. We'll have guests of the show just discussing basically 1 year ago, we were talking about the Last Dance. There was no sports, any sports. I mean, it felt like that was the Super Bowl each and every week. So we have a full panel just reminiscing and reflecting on not only that documentary, but where I think sports culture, basketball culture has gone since then. So I'm excited just to talk about it and just to reflect on this 1 year ago.
Man, and who doesn't want to talk about 90s basketball
Right.
any chance you get, especially if you're like our age and older. Man, 90s basketball, that's where it's at. Yeah. And getting better and better as far as the talent goes.
For sure. So let's not waste any time. Let's hop into the show, Matt, and let's get into your trending topics.
Yes. So every week we do our trend review. Since we aren't giving you guys the daily blow by blow, we want to make sure we keep you in the know with what's going on around the leagues. So let's start with the Eastern Conference. In terms of teams that are trending up, we have the Celtics, who badly needed this. They have won their last 6 games. They are sitting at 5th place in the East, and this is, guys, as of Sunday afternoon, so subject to change on some of these. We had a Nuggets streak that was broken during the podcast. Justin, you were kind enough to let me know as we were recording. So Celtics have won their last 6, sitting 5th in the East. The Knicks have won their last 5, and they are sitting right behind the Celtics at 6th in the East. The Wizards, oh my goodness, the Wizards are on here. They have won their last 4 games. Russell Westbrook, by the way, has had 7 straight triple doubles. We've heard this story before, but it's actually been translating to wins lately for the Wizards. And then at the top of the Eastern Conference, and last that we'll mention on our trends up, the 76ers have won their last 4 games, and they are still sitting pretty at the very top of the East. The Nets are a game back behind them at number 2 in the East. Trending down real quickly in the East, the Heat have lost their last 3. They are playing the Nets as we speak. Kevin Durant, by the way, while we're on that, he went out with a thigh injury in the first quarter, about 8 minutes into that game. The Charlotte Hornets are also trending down in the East. So the Heat are sitting at 7th in the East. They've lost their last 3. The Hornets are sitting at 8th, and they've lost their last 4 games. Moving on to the West, we don't have any really solid win streaks at this point in time. A lot of win streaks have been broken here. But trending down, we have the Sacramento Kings, who have lost their last 9. The Oklahoma City Thunder, let me try that again, have lost their last 9 as well. So they're sitting at 12 and 13th, respectively, in the West. And then they're always showing up on this list now at this point. Full-on tank mode. Now sitting at the bottom of the West, my Houston Rockets have lost their last 5 games. So in other trends, take a look at my notes here. Mentioned Kevin Durant leaving with an apparent thigh injury. We still don't know how serious that injury is. If we get an update during the show, we'll let you guys know, but keep your eyes out for that. In other injury news, let's just get this out of the way. Donovan Mitchell was sidelined this week with an ankle injury. Thankfully, there was no structural damage found, and it looks like he will be out for about a week. And the Jazz are still sitting at the top of the West, so they're in okay shape right there. A much more sad injury, Jamal Murray. After I praised the Nuggets last week when we talked about potential contenders on the West to maybe dethrone the Lakers, Jamal Murray tore his ACL this past week, early last week. I mean, pretty much almost right after we were done recording, Justin. It happened. And so we can, I think, give an RIP to the Nuggets for this season. As far as being a title contender, they may still be able to make some noise in the first round as far as the playoffs go, but I don't think they're going to be in contention for a title without him, as good as Aaron Gordon has looked. In other kind of moving on to more weird news, more fringe news. Last night, the Spurs were fined $25,000 for resting 3 of their players in a game against the Suns yesterday. So on the 17th, the Timberwolves similarly were also fined $25,000 for resting one of their players during a game this past Thursday. And then to end on a positive note, Dwayne Wade, as many retired players I think will follow in this trend, Dwayne Wade has joined the Jazz ownership group. So he is now a part owner of the Utah Jazz. And that's what I have for my trends. Justin, your thoughts?
Not too much other than some of your streaking teams. I think the Celtics, they've won 6 in a row after recording of this podcast. Huge victory over the Golden State Warriors, despite Steph Curry just being unconscious.
Oh, man.
Another shout out to the New York Knicks. They've won 6 in a row. And, that's what Tom Thibodeau, no secret that he is a fantastic coach in this league and what he's been doing. And really, other than that, I think so brutal when I heard about Jamal Murray. That's awful.
Yeah, such heartbreaking.
Very, very unfortunate injury, but that's kind of the nature of sports, and we'll discuss that later, just with the injury concerns going on in the league. But just concerning Jamal Murray, this is a horrible, horrible injury. Hopefully, we wish for him to have a steady recovery. But I think the Dwayne Wade, just real quickly, and I'll get your thoughts, Matt, that Dwayne Wade, him being part of the ownership of the Utah Jazz, unexpected, but very cool. I think Dwayne Wade has a name in this league, and if he were to stay with the Miami Heat, I think that would be the assumption that would be made. But him going to the Utah Jazz, they're experiencing a time of relevance with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, but they are not a power team in the NBA. You never know. They won't want trades, and they might want to be gone. And somebody with Dwayne Wade's caliber there, if he's truly involved with this team in terms of making some personnel decisions and just letting his star power, it could be a positive. Now, it's been a negative with someone like Michael Jordan, so that doesn't always work. But a team with the Utah Jazz that's not in the minds of fans always, if they don't have star players, I think it's a good thing to see Dwayne Wade involved. I'm sorry, man, I cut you off.
No, you're good, man. I think it's a great move, and I think the Jazz are an interesting basketball team because you think of Salt Lake City and pro sports franchises that are there. I mean, you think of collegiate sports a lot of the times. I think when you think about Utah, and the Jazz are uniquely there. They have a very unique and passionate fan base. So I think it is a great opportunity for him to be part of that ownership group. And keep in mind that nothing is set in stone as far as these ownership deals go. Yeah. If he finds a better opportunity for himself that he determines, and he ends up in Miami, which, just as a basketball fan in general, I would love to see him there in the Heat ownership group. But this looked like it must have been, and like you said off air before we talked about this, Justin, I think we'll get more news as to why he maybe didn't make the choice to join the Miami Heat right now in an ownership role. But for right now, if he determined that's the best move for him, that's great, and gets his foot in the door, lets him see what that is like. And I think it's a great opportunity for him. I wanted to circle back to Jamal Murray. Yeah. And another element to add to this story that I think is a really good point that I heard Bill Simmons bring up. What is so devastating about this ACL injury in particular is the timing and when this happened. With Markelle Fultz having his injury, back in the fall, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he's going to be back at the start of the next NBA season, most likely, or maybe like a month or two into the NBA season. Whereas with Jamal Murray, he will be out until next spring. So it's almost like it's a 2-season type of injury, which I think just adds a little more salt in the wound, so to speak. Yeah. But swift recovery, and we'll see if maybe he can be, provided it's safe, maybe he can be on a faster timeline.
Well, spoiler, I think injuries are a part of sports. I mean, you saw Steph Curry, playing against the Boston Celtics, he tweaked his ankle. That was a fluke.
Tweaked his back a few weeks ago.
Yeah, these are things happen in sports. These guys are high caliber athletes. So injuries are going to happen. So I don't really understand the correlation. We'll break that down later. But I just think with Jamal Murray, it's just, one of those things that's just a freak accident. Truly unfortunate. If we can move on, let's get to some more sad news. And that is with LaMarcus Aldridge announcing on Twitter this past Thursday that he's retiring from the NBA after experiencing an irregular heartbeat during his final experience with the team of the Brooklyn Nets. Here's a quote from him from ESPN. Quote, "For 15 years, I put basketball first, and now it's time to put my health and family first." Aldridge is 35. He experienced an irregular heartbeat during the Nets game against the Los Angeles Lakers last Saturday after his condition worsened. He said, quote, "The next morning, I told the team what was going on, and they were great getting me to the hospital. Though I'm better now, what I felt with my heart that night was still one of the most scariest things I've experienced." So it's a horrible thing to happen to LaMarcus Aldridge, something that you have your career ripped from you, not by choice, but by extremely circumstances. And I think, just to keep it positive, we can kind of reflect on, his legacy. And maybe, I don't know if it's premature to say maybe his Hall of Fame chances, but overall, what do you make of LaMarcus Aldridge's career? I have to be brutally honest, and I'll let you go, and then I'll respond to what you have to say, Matt. I think it's been a little bit of a disappointment, to be totally honest with you. Just the caliber of player he was and what potential he had. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Chicago drafted him. Is that correct, or they're involved. I have to refresh my
You're
memory,
correct.
but
Yep. First round, second pick, second overall in the
yeah.
2006 NBA draft. I'm looking on Basketball Reference right now.
So
Yeah.
I remember that happening, and I was like, why are they doing this? Yeah, and then I think the rights were traded to Portland Trailblazers, so he was there, and he was a big part of building that team with Damian Lillard as well, and CJ McCollum, and it just couldn't work out in terms of just getting all those guys to mesh for a solid playoff run. Just such a bummer. But I do think it's at least with Greg Oden, I can say I don't think he would have been anything special, to be completely honest. LaMarcus
Really?
Aldridge, I don't. I just people just say, oh, he could be this great, Hall of Fame player. I'm like, I don't see it just with his injuries. But with LaMarcus Aldridge, I did see a lot of potential in him, and I think the reason why I say is a disappointment because we saw flashes of just brilliance and what he can bring to a team, and just the way we're seeing Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum step up their level, and for them to trade LaMarcus Aldridge, I think it's just a huge warning sign. Not only that, but also with him in San Antonio. Remember with him and DeMar DeRozan, I'm like, okay, this is the new San Antonio Spurs, and we just haven't seen the fruits of that trade of those signings. So, what do you make of LaMarcus Aldridge's legacy? Am I being too harsh, or is there something to that in terms of his overall playing career?
No, I think you're right. I mean, first and foremost, I would say about LaMarcus Aldridge that he was very skilled, very talented.
Agreed.
When you talk about Greg Oden, I think that guy was a beast if he could have stayed healthy, but he didn't have the skill set that LaMarcus Aldridge had. LaMarcus fit better into modern day NBA. Even this current season, he was shooting 38% from the three-point line. He was not a three-point shooter when he came into the league. Almost kind of reminds me, sadly, someone else who had to end their career early due to medical restrictions was Chris Bosh, and how he developed that three-point shot and how versatile he was. LaMarcus Aldridge was kind of another one of those prototypes, this power forward, center, kind of stretch five, if you want to say it that way, though he certainly didn't play that way in his early career in Portland. But this is a guy who shot, I think 81% from the free throw line for his career. Yeah, which is very good for a big. So he had a great shooting touch. If you remember, I think one of the playoff series when the Spurs were set against the Oklahoma City Thunder, one of the big talking points, one of the X factors of that series was how good is LaMarcus Aldridge going to be? How effective is he going to be at mid-range? Because he had such an effective mid-range shot. So almost kind of this connection to the old game, almost kind of like he was trying to fill in a Tim Duncan type of role. And we know Tim Duncan retired around that time that LaMarcus Aldridge came onto the Spurs. He was kind of seen as the next guy to carry the baton, so to speak, and lead the Spurs on. Sadly, things just didn't work out there. I mean, we had the Kawhi drama. We had a lot of other stuff than just LaMarcus Aldridge on his own. Yeah. And it didn't pan out that way. So I think a very talented guy. His closest shot to a title, other than maybe this year, if he would have stayed on, was that Portland team where if we would have seen Brandon Roy stay healthy, I think that Portland team really was a title threat. You had young Dame Lillard as well. There was a big collection of talent there in Portland that it didn't pan out for those guys. So it's kind of constant ups and downs like that. I think a very skilled, talented player, again, I'll say talented rebounder, talented defender, but an offensive threat and a guy who could spread the floor, especially like his later career as he developed an outside shot even.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he gets out with his health.
Agreed.
I'm glad he made this decision. Of course, that's his right to make that decision. It sounds like it was the right call. And of course, we hope him continued health. He's 35, had a good long career, and made a lot of money. So, hopefully he and his family will be great.
Some accolades, and if you want to add anything more to this, just let me know, Matt. 7-time NBA All-Star, 2-time NBA second team, 3-time All NBA, third team, NBA All Rookie, first team. He was a McDonald's All American, first team All Big 12. He averaged about 19 points a game, about 8 rebounds, 2 assists. And again, played for the Portland Trail Blazers, San Antonio Spurs, and Brooklyn Nets. So I think, especially with different kinds of players, I think he'll get mentioned into the Hall of Fame discussion. I don't think he'll get in. This is my opinion, but I'm sure his name will pop up.
Yeah.
I you know how it goes. I think he'll certainly get some love, but I don't think he'll get in my opinion.
Yeah, it's always hard to say because the NBA, it's easier to make it in there than other Hall of Fames. But
agreed.
Yeah, I personally would not put him in as a Hall of Famer myself, but I'm probably a little more harsh than the NBA Hall of Fame voting system.
I think
we'll see what happens. I think because he was such a talented scorer, he's going to be in the conversation. He's going to be in debates, I would guess. But we'll see what happens. And, people tend to, let's see, he's got 19,951 career points in 15 seasons of play. That's tough, man, because that's right on the border where if he had scored 50 more points as he would have this season, then he's in the 20,000 point club. So maybe I'm wrong in being harsh. Maybe he's going to make it. I'm going to have to pull up some other numbers and see how he compares to other power forwards.
Yeah, the Basketball Hall of Fame it's weird because college is factored into it too, and along with like Olympics and other things. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Certainly a discussion we'll have in the future. I got some breaking news, and it's concerning Dwayne Wade. His role with Turner Sports, because he's also an analyst for TNT, not expected to change after he purchased a minority stake in the Utah Jazz, according to a network source. So he does the Tuesday broadcast for TNT, so he'll be there every week, similar to Shaq. I think Shaq owns a minority stake with the Sacramento Kings, and Shaq's there every week. So I think it'll be a similar deal in which I don't think you'll see too much of a difference in coverage. So,
awesome.
If you don't mind, I want to move on, Matt, and you have the story on this, just regarding NBA injuries. And now there's been a lot of this chatter among the league, with Luka and Mark Cuban among like the play-in game in terms of, hey, like we're not down for this play-in tournament, and other players saying, what's with these injuries? A lot of players are getting more hurt than normal. But Matt, you have some stats released by the NBA that says to the contrary, that injuries are actually down this year as compared to years past.
Yeah, so this is from the AP, Tim Reynolds from the AP reporting here. The NBA reports injuries are down 6% from the past 5-year average this season. So I think it's obvious the timing of this report coming out and the league releasing this information is to kind of combat some of the narrative. And I think we've seen a lot of star players, some big names go down with injuries this past season. I mean, right now, off the top of my head, I mean, both LeBron James and AD have been out for the Lakers. So I think it's understandable that the perception from fans has been that injuries have been up. The NBA wanted to release some statistics to show what the reality is. So that's where we're getting this. Going back to the report, we've had So NBA reports injuries are down 6%. We covered that. And that's total injuries across the board. There have been 4 ACL tears this season, one of those being Jamal Murray's. And that matches the per season average of the last 10 years of the data that we have. And this is all in spite of teams playing an average 3.6 games per week this season, which is up 5% from the last year of play. So games are more frequent, teams are playing more often, and yet for whatever reason, injuries are down. So I don't know, these are small numbers, these are less than 10% type of numbers, but they are, I guess, statistically significant numbers if we're looking at it. I think a lot of, just to give you my thought real quick, and then I want your perspective on this, of course, Justin. So much of injuries in a sport like the NBA, and you alluded to this earlier with Jamal Murray, but so much of this is basically like a game of roulette. I don't know that we can expect to see really. I don't know. There are limitations on how we can control the frequency of injuries that are happening. I mean, certainly, yeah, I think if you go to extremes and if you had teams playing 6 games a week, then yeah, we're going to see a statistical difference with guys legitimately not getting enough recovery time. But when you see a trend like this, I think it's a lucky and fortunate trend for the NBA. Of course, having good faith that the NBA is reporting accurate statistics and that those statistics are broad. I think it also is very fortunate for the NBA that in a season where the frequency of games is up, the injuries are actually slightly down. I think that's fortunate, and we'll see what happens for the rest of the year. Justin, please, your thoughts.
I want to add to the story real quick, and I'll give my thoughts. So Baxter Holmes of ESPN has comments from an anonymous NBA GM, I guess like 2 of them, and they have thoughts to the contrary of that AP news report. So I'll pass it over to you after I read this. So it says, quote, "Hands down, it's the worst schedule I've seen in 25 years in the league," said one veteran assistant coach. "It's utterly insane." One veteran head coach called it brutal. Added one NBA GM, "I've never experienced anything like our injury spate. Every dumb soft tissue injury that could happen is happening and will only get worse." The NBA GM said, "We have defaulted into survival mode," said a second GM. So that's interesting because
Wow.
you know how teams are, like they report every little injury. So the stats don't bear that out. So I'll go with the NBA on this one. I mean, how many times we just go through the years of this players getting hurt on, freak injuries? It happens.
Right.
I mean, like as I mentioned before with Steph Curry, I mean, he could have that play where he rolled his ankle, he could have broken his ankle. I mean, no one was near him. And he was being double teamed the entire night, but that injury could have planted his foot and his ankle rolled. I mean, that's just a freak accident. That's sports. So I don't have anything too extensive to say other than like, I don't understand why people are freaking out. If the stats bear that out, if it was like 25%, 30%, then yeah, I'd be pointing to concern. And even then, this is a weird season. I mean, the circumstances are unlike any other in the history of mankind with this pandemic. So it's not like their next NBA season is going to be like this in terms of what is happening. And also remember, this is a players' league. So everything that the NBA may like, maybe in terms of the back-to-backs, other things that they may like with the schedule, the players are going to have a massive say into this. So ultimately, if they think these circumstances suck, they'll get their way and they'll get it changed. So overall, I'm not too concerned. I think it's brutal what happened to Jamal Murray, what happened to Donovan Mitchell. Hopefully Kevin Durant's okay, and what's happened to LeBron and Anthony Davis. It sucks. I mean, injuries are brutal. You never want to see that. At the same time, I mean, I'm going to go with the stats, and I don't see anything peculiar as a result of this season. As of anything, I think some things have actually been a positive in terms of not having to deal with fans, limiting their interactions going outside, is focusing on just travel and playing basketball. I think that's a positive. But, guys, they're going to get hurt. These are high quality athletes. They're straining their bodies more than a normal human being. I mean, these are some of the most elite, all of them are the most elite athletes, in basketball. So these things are prone to happen. So I'm not too concerned. I think it sucks to see about injury, but am I worried about the rest of the season? No. And I think next season, ultimately, if this is an issue, then I think it will be rectified next season and things will probably go back to normal.
Spot on, man. And I agree with a lot of what you said there. Actually, everything you said there. And I also, just hearing the quotes that you mentioned sounds very emotionally charged and very, gosh, I don't know, like there's an axe to grind there or something
Or,
else going on there. Plus, they're anonymous sources. So I'm with you in that I'm going to look at the data and make the judgment based off of that. At the end of the day, nobody wants anyone to get injured, of course, in a perfect world. But this is a very powerful, explosive sport. There's a lot of stop and go. There's a lot of cutting. These injuries happen across the board and at every level of athletics, high school, college, pro, these things happen. I also just wanted to add that, I mentioned those fines that the Timberwolves and that the Spurs got this past week, the Spurs just yesterday for resting 3 players in that game. Do you think, and maybe this is rhetorical, but do you think the Spurs, do you think Popovich cares? Do you think the Spurs organization cares that you fine them 25,000? Exactly.
yeah.
They don't care. And I think if I definitely see, I agree that the NBA has a vested interest in the quality of the product, and I understand why they have the rules set that way. But at the end of the day, if it's a $25,000 fine, and if I'm legitimately worried that my star needs another rest or extra time, something like that, beyond what the league policy guidelines are, which I don't have the policy guidelines in front of me, but I imagine that they are pretty reasonable. Let's be honest. I just don't see these teams really caring about dropping another 25,000 to make sure that those players are rested and doing what they need to do.
Yeah, they can care less. Let's just be real. The end game is winning the title, and if they have to eat 25 grand, who cares? So that's a gladly paying of a fine. So again, I don't see this as a huge deal. I think it sucks, but in terms of an epidemic, what is the league going to do about it? I mean, let's say there's something. Let's just say instead of 6, it was 50%. What the league? What can't happen to fix the situation, right? So I just think with teams, they're going to do what they got to do. If they want to sit, they'll take the consequences and they'll pay that fine. If they don't, they'll take their chances. We're kind of in the home stretch heading into the play-in game. And we're going to go from there. But I don't see it ruining the enjoyment of these games or everything going on, or if this is a massive problem in the league. I just don't see it, especially the way these injuries are happening. And, maybe we'll get some more information as time goes on, but I just don't see it as an issue.
Yep, I'm with you, man.
Anything else you wanted to talk about before we wrap it up for this week?
I think we're good, man. Guys, stay tuned to the feed to check out these great interviews that we've had. It's truly one of the joys of my week to look forward to talking to these personalities and these experts in the sport of basketball and beyond. It's been just a lot of fun. And again, I'll iterate, if you guys particularly enjoy one of the interviews that you hear, please pay it forward for us and give a shout out to them on their Twitter handles, on their social media that we're linking to. We want them to know that you enjoyed their perspective as we certainly are.
Agreed. We could run down the guests we've had. The founder of Ball is Life, Rachel Galligan, Steph Soto, Isabel Gonzalez, everything from NBA Top Shot to the University of Mexico men's basketball team to the legacy of Elgin Baylor. We have a huge library of interviews to listen to. But the date for our listeners and viewers to take hold is April 26th. That will be the day on YouTube. The Last Dance anniversary panel of Hoopsology will premiere. And then if you wanted the audio side to get a little bit of a sneak peek, the audio should be up that night for you to check out. So that will be our 1-year anniversary of Hoopsology, our relaunch, and we're going to have special guests that you might have heard through our archives that's reflecting on everything concerning The Last Dance, as I mentioned earlier. So please go check that out. And not to mention, we'll have a couple of surprises too for that week, not to mention a huge announcement as well. So that's going to be stored. I'm very excited, looking forward to that, man.
Likewise, yep. Lots of news to come, and of course, lots more content to come. Looking forward to it.
So for Matt Thomas, I am Justin Goodrum, and we will see you next time. Thanks for listening to Hoopsology.